Well, a very good morning to you and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the Content Capital. My name is Keaton Shaw and it's always a pleasure to have you along with us as we seek to continue the discussions, pushing the conversation as we hope to progress. This morning it's a bit damp, it's a bit wet, it's a bit cold, but nevertheless it's a new day and we're lucky and fortunate to be here. So wherever you are this morning, we hope that you're doing well. We hope that you had a good weekend. And if you are heading out onto the roadways this morning, as always, please be very careful in your journey. As they always say, drive for the other people on the road as well. But a lot to discuss this morning, as you would have probably heard over the weekend, the Prime Minister's press conference, and we'll continue examining the bilateral relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. But this morning, alongside me, as always, is my co-host, colleague, and good friend, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. And yes, the Prime Minister, he had a press conference on Saturday. And you could argue, again, he does take his time to explain, and at times is quite long-winded with his explanations. I think, again, he was trying to give people, because you always have the question of, oh, why not this and why not that? And if you do this, why is it the other thing not also the same way? And so he was trying to give some sort of context. Fine, cool. But regardless, it is what it is. We have a week to go. And for the most part, it seems as though he is very much intent, and Cabinet is very much intent to get rid of restrictions relatively as quickly as possible, with only some things being held on to as it seemed like a just in case. So we have a clip where he more or less outlines what is being changed, and let's run the clip.
As of tomorrow, with respect to the requirement for having a person coming into our country and having to have only a PCR test, as of tomorrow we'll accept an antigen test which can be had very easily, very quickly, just to ensure that if persons are determined by the test that you are sick, that we can handle you a little differently, because the danger of an infected person on Omicron is not as severe as it was with Delta. The travel pass would remain for a little while just to make sure we can manage that. I anticipate that very soon we would be able to lift this as well. We came up with a system of minimizing exposures of persons and determining who was vaccinated and who was not. We're in a position now to do away with all of that. We can do away with the safe zone operations, and we will be required now to continue to wear the face mask in a public place, except if you are on a sporting field, if you are in an environment where you're engaging in physical sporting activity. That would be optional, but there would not be a legal requirement to have your mask on. But other than that, in a public place, like in public transport or in the public place, for the time being, we'll continue to keep the mask on, and we will remove the requirements, all restrictions that existed on going to rivers and beaches and so on, they'll be removed completely. And that will come into effect on the 4th of April. That's Monday coming. And there's no limit to public gatherings. You may recall there was...
So that more or less is it. We have a week to go, and then a lot of the restrictions that have been, you could argue, holding us back. But in what way? I would argue that for the most part, the economy has been operating, except for the entertainment industry, of course, has been operating about as well as you could ask for. Maybe the tourism industry, airlines and ferries, maybe now that will ramp up their schedules. Hopefully, I'm not too sure with regards to international travel with everything else going on, if tourism is going to get full reprieve now. Our policies did not necessarily stymie that per se. What does this mean with regards to internationals coming in? Could they come in unvaccinated? So I think this might be a case where there's a lot of details of various policies that were added on that I assume that a lot of them will be out. And he did say that they would try to just say what they're going to keep to try to make things simpler. But for the most part, yeah, we're reopening. And I think for those who are unvaccinated, I guess that's the biggest difference because the safe zones are being removed.
Now, interestingly, all requirements for the TT travel pass will remain. Of course, the PCR test is no longer mandatory. You can use a rapid antigen test. My concern is, again, I think it's about time that the restrictions were lifted. We have always advocated for individuals to consult with their physicians and get vaccinated if possible. But the reason why I've been advocating for the restrictions to be lifted is, in my opinion, it made no more sense, just based on the extent to which we are already open and we will be fully reopened from April 4th. However, considering that there are no restrictions and no limits, as the Prime Minister pointed out, in fact, people are now, stating that from April 4th, pets are going to return.
Probably.
Yes. So with that, does it even make sense to continue the antigen testing, or to even just do away with PCR testing, mandatory PCR testing, and have the rapid antigen testing? I mean, does that even make any sense?
I think at this point it's mainly just to monitor the numbers of incoming because there's active infections and lockdowns in Southeast Asia. So you don't want another variant to take you by surprise. And to how long they will continue to do this, because it seemed to have been implied that they're also looking to put that an end pretty soon. They just don't necessarily want anything to come up on surprise. I think the implication is if you're a returning national, you could get tested, and how do I put it? I don't want to misspeak, but it seemed almost as though they just wanted to know if you had COVID or not at this point.
Well, you see, the thing for me is the limitations with a rapid antigen test. I mean, it's highly inaccurate, to say the least. I'm not saying it's completely inaccurate, but most times a rapid antigen test gives you an accurate result based on the symptoms that you have and the symptoms that you're experiencing. So that is something to bear in mind as well. Now, anyone who is entering Trinidad and Tobago who may be asymptomatic and has COVID-19 may not show up on the rapid antigen testing. But I think we're worldwide now. We're now at that stage where even though there is a new variant, and we've been monitoring Hong Kong, just as an example, I think we've reached a stage now where we've accepted that our vaccination levels aren't going to increase anytime soon. We're more or less mixing now. Everybody's mixing within the public domain now, both locally, regionally, and internationally. And it's just a matter of, I may sound very cross here, but survival of the fittest, I suppose.
Well, so yes, all indications says that we either have a population that is vaccinated and protected, or they've been infected, overcome the infection, whether knowingly or unknowingly, and have natural immunity. Hong Kong, Singapore, and other parts of China are basically examples of what happens if you're not vaccinated and if you don't have natural immunity, what Omicron could still do. Because our numbers are dropping and instead of rising, it's a fair assumption to make. I think that's what the health team is going for. The full health team did their briefing, the customary briefing today. Dr. Hines and Dr. Richards pointed to the reduction in numbers. Yesterday or Saturday, the number of deaths was only 2, which is the first time that I can remember it being so small in Trinidad proper. And so what else is there to say? Things are looking good, and unfortunately, other external factors notwithstanding, we needed to reopen sooner rather than later. So, okay, they played it safe. This is not going to solve everything because it's not just the lockdown, and commercially, quite a lot was open for the last couple of months.
Now, As we're trying to be a bit of devil's advocates and look at this from a critical perspective, because again, we are satisfied at the Prime Minister's announcement, but from a critical perspective, the two major restrictions, we've just discussed the rapid antigen testing for all incoming travelers. The other restriction that will remain in effect is a mandatory mask wearing within a public setting, less for physical activity. With that, as we look around the world, in many places, mask wearing has become optional. I give you an example, as in the United States, some districts within the United States, within a singular state, can change that, and they've already changed that. For example, we were looking at Seattle just a couple of weeks ago, just based on their case numbers, but the United Kingdom, for example, mask wearing is optional. Should that be, in your opinion, something that, I mean, I know it would have been considered, but do you think that it's a matter of, okay, we're now pushing to reopen, we will be fully reopened, but at the same time, we need to practice this measure just in the event?
Well, we still have a couple of people. Yesterday was 3. The day before was 2. Again, those numbers are the lowest we've had for 3 months. So I don't know if maybe the health team is saying, look, minimal things could hopefully keep this number. Instead of 3, it might be 2. Instead of 2, it might be 1 a day. That might seem small, but you're talking about people's lives. Now, most of the people who are going to die from this stage are going to be the most vulnerable to COVID-19. You're not necessarily going to have as much random young people with some predisposition that they didn't know about, some quirk that is, you can't really tell, that's going to hit them hard with COVID and potentially take their lives. But it's still affecting people who relatively should be safe, whether vaccinated or fit or whatever. It's still affecting people and maybe not putting them in hospital into ICU, but it's still there. So it's still going around. Try to limit as much as possible. Things like wearing a mask, at the end of the day, it's not really going to impact retail, manufacturing, so on, to have it, right? Restaurants, bars, they've been open up, operating as safe zones, the cinemas, regardless. So just keeping that doesn't really cost us anything, economically speaking. It's just an inconvenience. But I mean, it's a marginal protection, but it might be enough to save us from a couple more deaths.
Well, I think the medical team and the Prime Minister are satisfied as to where we are right now and where we're heading. But it also displays something that throughout the pandemic we have not often seen, and that is confidence and trust within the public. The Prime Minister himself has stated the government and the police are no longer going to come out and tell you what to do. But personal responsibility still plays a major role. So you as an individual now have a choice as to what you'd like to do, how you'd like to go about treating this and handling the situation. And all we can advise you to do is practice best healthcare, proper healthcare. I still believe that anywhere you go, always wash your hands at first choice. Bear that in mind. If you cannot wash your hands, please sanitize. Remember, though we're moving out of all these restrictions, and though it seems as though we're finding our way out of the pandemic, we still are in a pandemic. The virus is still part of the entire narrative. So we have to bear that in mind as well. But for now, we have smiles on our faces, and we look forward to this day, April 4th, next week. We look forward to that as the restrictions related to COVID-19 here in Trinidad and Tobago will be removed.
Well, one thing before we end this segment, it seems as though, and I said it before, the Prime Minister, he might have been a bit long-winded. You know, some of us wish that he would get to the point and try and be a bit more brief. And I think his communication will be more effective. It will be easier to distribute it and disseminate it with the public. His words, not having to edit and cut, because I always hope that no one thinks that we edit the Prime Minister's words to fit a narrative when we have to edit him for time in order to get the message across. So there is that. The opposition has decided to criticize the announcement by saying, well, what about X, Y, and Z? What about, okay, lifting restrictions, but policies to help with certain situations that arise from the pandemic and certain aspects of economic recovery. And I do wonder to what extent is this just complaining for the sake of complaining or overreach? Because first of all, that decision, I'm pretty sure it was not necessarily one that was, well, it wasn't that serious now to reopen, but it was one that took time, and a lot of these other things like our mental health problem, our suicide rate, our economic recovery, those who might need help in a whole host of different systems, starting up businesses, helping with loan financing, or people who might be in too much debt, as we saw a couple of weeks ago with that tragic case. Like, I understand that these things are critical, but to say that the Prime Minister's single press conference is supposed to solve or say how it's going to solve all of our problems, this is being redundant, but I'm a bit disappointed once again.
Well, I'd just like to add to what you just said. First of all, I am starting, or at least trying to understand, the Prime Minister's lengthy presentations. First of all, I think that you can never satisfy a Trinbagonian. Put that out there. You can never satisfy a Trinbagonian. And I like to be fair to the Prime Minister this morning. And I will always try to be fair to the Prime Minister. I think if the Prime Minister did not explain to the extent that he did, and it's always debatable, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I think if he didn't do that, there'd be issues. And I think at the same time, the Prime Minister has to explain these things just so the message gets out there. I think he has to justify his point. So there are two sides to that argument, and you can never satisfy a Trinbagonian. In relation to the opposition has a role to play to critically assess, analyze, and put out solutions. We have not often seen that on their part. And even using the term often as part of that sentence is stretching it a bit. But in relation to the opposition, it is at this point criticizing for criticizing's sake. I don't think the opposition has any satisfaction in anything that is said on the part of the government. And if the opposition has valid points, they can do a lot better in terms of their communication, in terms of their media releases, their press releases, and just how they go about doing the business of the opposition. But it's the opposition. And yes, we are pushing for economic recovery, and we're hoping things take place. But the Prime Minister made this announcement, and he didn't even say effective from today, be it the 28th of March. He said from April 4th. So I'm hoping that within the next week or so, the Prime Minister will meet with Cabinet and those in authority, relevant business owners or organizations, whatever it may be, to try and assess the situation and where we are currently and how best the government can help the private sector, and by extension, which will have an effect on the public sector going forward, so that we can see some economic reprieve to the current situation.
It's funny, because what you just said there, something you just said there, triggered a thought. What if the opposition, I don't know, floated suggestions for all of these things that they criticized, being no potential solutions offered for? And then, if they're good suggestions and the government uses them, you could argue that it was your idea first. And if the government refuses to do them for no good, valid reason, then, you know, now your criticisms start to have a certain degree of weight. But I think the main thing is, preempt the government. They didn't talk about it. You talk about it. Offer things. Be the first one to offer a solution that the public could weigh in on, and then go from there. That will give us something more.
Yes, and as stated at this time, by Rishi Sukai, who is the president of the Shoguners Chamber of Commerce, he said it best himself. He said, now is the time for unity. And though he was speaking from a different angle in terms of an entirely different situation, that goes all around. I mean, everyone here in Trinidad and Tobago is trying to survive at this point. We're all trying to see our way through. We all want to have a sustainable future, not only for ourselves, but for our children and our grandchildren. So at this point, this goes more so for the opposition. Even if you are not satisfied with the behavior, the announcements, or just the entire actions of the government, you can be an effective opposition and a voice for individuals who may be dissatisfied. Unfortunately, you have a lot to work on in relation to that. and again, being fair all around. You have a role, you have a responsibility and a duty, but just coming out and saying that, I don't think it wasn't the best way to say it, put it that way. It could have been done a lot better, as pointed out by my co-host. It could have been a preempt. That in itself wasn't a preempt. That was just throwing out and spewing your own rhetoric, and unfortunately, you can do a lot better, and it seems as though you choose not to. Anyway, folks, let's take a break here now on Talking Points, and when we return, we take a look at another situation that has had further developments. It started off last week within the walls of Parliament. We heard from the Vice President of Guyana, and the Prime Minister on Saturday gave a response, and interestingly enough, the Vice President of Guyana also had a response. So when we return, we continue that conversation, and later on, hopefully we'll have Alderman Danielle Piper, our guest commentator for Mondays, to join us for a conversation on her thoughts as to local government reform. Stay tuned to the program.
Say hello to the newest way to access eye care support. Say hello to Ferrera Optical Virtual Care. For the first time in TNT, you can now connect from the convenience of your home with our team of eye care professionals online. Need guidance on a vision problem or adapting to new eyewear? Book a virtual visit via FerreraOptical.com using our smart scheduler, and we'll take care of the rest. Ferrera Optical Virtual Care, connecting with you wherever you are.
Alexa, can you play my song, please?
Every day across Trinidad, Flow is connecting communities near and far. Our dedicated teams are always working to keep you connected to the world beyond your doorstep. Improving internet accessibility across Trinidad, one home at a time. At Flow, we work hard for you, so you work hard for your family on the largest high-speed network. Connecting you to more every day with Flow.
Change your fate! Start to win at life with $20,000 every month. Win $20,000 every month for 20 years with NLCB's newest game, Win for Life. 6 numbers from 28 plus the cash ball could make you win for life. You deserve a win. Play Win for Life today. Visit NLCBGames.com for details. Players must be 18 years and over. Please play responsibly.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
There are a lot of people in Guyana, and I am not really distracted by Vice President Jagdeo's comments about us. A lot of people comment about us, some favorably and some not. We will not be distracted by that.
Welcome back to the program. So you heard from the Prime Minister. He will not be distracted by Vice President Maher Jagdeo's comments, and that's fine, that's fair enough. And I'll tell you what, he's actually made fair comments there. I'll tell you why. He's trying, at least, to not get involved in any sort of diplomatic feud. I mean, already comments were made within the walls of Parliament last week, Wednesday. I think that the Prime Minister should have held restraint, but Karen gave an explanation in relation to the comparisons to Mia Mottley, and perhaps Guyana not being at the forefront right now. And then Vice President Maher Jagdeo again made comments of which we'll get into shortly. But that response on the part of the Prime Minister is perhaps just trying to extinguish any sorts of burning flames on his part, saying that he wouldn't get caught up in a diplomatic feud. I don't think that is unfair. I think, however, that he should elaborate a bit more, because even though the diplomatic ties are strong between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, as pointed out by the Foreign Affairs Minister in Guyana, Mr. Prasad, we also have to consider what is our business relationship with Guyana in terms of what bilateral agreements are in place. And that is what we're trying to focus on, because Guyana is a land of opportunity right now, and Guyana has even stated that we should be working with them.
Right, so the PM did take a follow-up question. He did not necessarily, and you could argue maybe he was taking bait of a different sort, where he said, well, the reason for his outburst was Rodney Charles and what he believes Rodney Charles represents with regards to international relations. So we wouldn't necessarily want to go to that part of the conversation. Now with the Guyana Vice President, the one who made the comments, you could argue, which was a bit controversial, saying that our economy was falling apart. It was touted that he followed up and he did not necessarily walk back his words, which is not entirely true. So we have a clip from what he said, particularly with regards directly to the statement that he made earlier last week. Let's take a listen to that and continue the discussion after.
Well, I've had a lot of calls from Trinidadians too who said, we agree with you. I've tracked what's going on in Trinidad and Tobago for quite a while. And what I've said before there is not anything new. Every day it's being said in Trinidad and Tobago itself by people, common people, as well as people in every circle. The groups that come here on the private sector, they say this all the time. Now the fact is that Trinidad, and this is indisputable, that its economy is heavily reliant on one sector, oil and gas sector. That's a fact. I've had discussions with several leaders there about a post-oil and gas economy. So this has nothing to do with just Rowley. This is the fact of the economy in Trinidad and Tobago over a long period, growing to rely only on one sector. There is a theory that that shouldn't happen. Theoretically, the danger has been pointed out, and it's called the Dutch disease. And practically, it has consequences for your country too, and we've seen it happen in Trinidad and Tobago. I recall reading one of their budgets, an earlier budget, not the 2022 budget, where in 1 year they lost 80% of their revenue because of the change in oil and gas prices and the fall in production. To organize a budget when you have such a big economic shock, it is difficult. Things will fall apart, whether you like it or not. And so, I said, we are determined in Guyana to avoid going down that path, which has happened not just in Trinidad and Tobago, but in many countries of the world, where because they did precisely what APNU is trying to get us to do, they ended up with those consequences.
So the Vice President, he did admit that some of the things that Trinidadian politicians said about Guyana that sounded very bad and might have seemed unnecessary, in his opinion, he did admit some of that could have been or was true. And he also went on to point out that, yes, there have been some bad relations through unofficial challenge interaction of the citizens coming into, like Guyana citizens coming into Piarco, etc., which he does not necessarily look kindly upon or appreciate as does their citizens. However, the point that he was trying to make was with regards to the economy and to see what they could learn to do differently, because currently two of the opposition parties in Guyana are essentially asking for social programs with their newfound wealth, to give money, distribute money to citizens as pandemic relief. And he's saying, no, we've seen where that road leads. And I do believe either he or the president, more or less their intention is to take a more long-term investment, so that money that oil and gas realizes in Guyana will be in a fund like what our Heritage and Stabilization Fund was supposed to be, that they could have long-term.
Now, here's my thoughts on Vice President Barajaragdo's response. First of all, I don't think his comments were unfair initially. I thought that he was speaking the truth. And I think...
Just the falling apart line might have been a little too inflammatory.
Again, inflammatory is the correct term to use. We're speaking on a diplomatic level.
Yeah.
As a citizen, right, I thought, okay, he's speaking of the realities that we're facing. And we, and I say we, TNT, in many ways became very defensive. Mm-hmm. And I thought every right to stand up for Trinidad and Tobago. I love my country, and I will defend my country, but at the same time, I'm not going to be blind. I want to be realistic. So it's debatable in terms of him being more diplomatic. But in relation to that, I think that he should not have gone on to make the comments to the extent that he just did. I'll tell you why. Not only was he defending his comments in a situation that has already seemed to have led a heated row. I suppose diplomatically, foreign affairs ministers will come out and say, well, the relations are strong and whatnot. But that may not be the case. That may just be for the public domain. I do not want to make the assumption. The point I'm making is that just based off of the comments there, it seems as though he went a bit further.
Yeah.
To state that, well, I've been following Trinidad and Tobago's domestic politics, and by focusing on domestic politics, that's when people now say, he's meddling further. He's not actually taking a step back and just leaving his former comments where he's actually going a bit further, getting a bit more involved in domestic politics, and he should not be doing that.
Well, I think the key point is, because there's an ongoing debate in Guyana with regards to a difference of opinion on policy of what to do with their government revenue. And I think that's the problem. And he's trying to make the case strongly. And he's essentially not just pointing to TNT, but he's pointing around the world. And again, he did concede that when our local leaders questioned Guyana's democracy, he said, well, yes, I can't remember exactly, but he more or less said what was said about Guyanese democracy to some extent was true. He did not shy away from the challenges they faced on that front. And ultimately, what he said, that's more or less in line of things that not just economists, but we ourselves have said with regards to what to do with oil revenue and long-term spending versus short-term variable cost spending.
Now you have to bear in mind, again, trying to be as objective as possible here, Barajaragdo at the same time would say, okay, those comments about our democracy were fair, simply because it was at that time of the election when there was so much controversy surrounding then President Mr. Granger versus the incumbent Irfaan Ali. There was a lot of controversy surrounding that. So his comments would be based off of that and the fact that it was stated that they were the elected party, but there was so many controversies surrounding recounts, this district, that district. So bear that in mind. But generally speaking, his initial comments, in my opinion, not necessarily unfair, could have been said better diplomatically.
Yeah.
But I don't think he should not have gone to the extent that he did in those comments. I think he should have just stated, listen, I stand by my comments. I've had discussions and conversations with others in the past about it, and I continue to observe what is taking place globally as well as within Trinidad and Tobago, and just left it there. I don't think he should have gone to the extent of the domestic politics as he did.
Well, but ultimately it was more economics than anything else. One thing also to note, he himself has also in that press conference, you could find it on social media and watch the remaining 6 minutes or so. he also is calling on the skills of Trinidadians, right? But now things are getting complicated with regards to policies that they have to put into place to make that happen beyond just what CARICOM has in place.
Certainly indeed. Well, this conversation will continue. Guyana is a land of opportunity right now, and I do believe that we should be looking at them to sort of help our situation down here. But we can also help Guyana. We can also help Guyana very much in terms of their oil and gas market, using our experience and just basically the expertise that we have down here to hopefully help their situation there as well. So it can work hand in hand. It's if we really want to. And at the end of the day, why not? Guyana's President Irvin Ali, as I've pointed out innumerable times, he himself stated there is a loss of opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago, and we want to work with Trinidad and Tobago. We are willing to work with Trinidad and Tobago. It's just now Guyana's extended their hand. It's now up to us. Have your thoughts heard? Call in after the 9 o'clock news on the hour and share with us your thoughts, not only on the Prime Minister's response, but also Barry Jagder's response, as well as just a general opinion on whether or not we should extend our hands to Guyana as well to work with them. As I said, the benefits to both sides of this. Anyway, folks, let's take a break now. When we return, the Alderman will be joining us via Zoom this morning, where we talk about local government reform, the motion that was moved in Parliament last week. We get into some criticisms, some positives, and just the opinions and the thoughts of the Alderman. So stay tuned to Talking Point here on WESN, the Content Capital.
Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from FanZone with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. FanZone, we've got you covered.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Local government reform, something that has been decades in the making and often been cried for as a necessity, something that's often been put on the back burner here in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, that all changed last week, Wednesday, when Leader of Government Business in the House, Camille Robinson Regis, moved the motion for local government reform. And we had a debate here ourselves last week, Thursday, on local government reform and what was moved. And quite interesting enough, it seems as though heads are turning, saying that they're dissatisfied, but then there are others that are supporting this bill. And I've stated before, I think I'm rather satisfied. I do have a couple concerns, but with any piece of legislation, you will always have concerns and criticisms. And this morning, to share their opinion on this is Alderman Daniel Piper of the Sangre Grande Regional Corporation. Good morning, Alderman.
Good morning to the listeners, to the viewers on Facebook. Good morning, Kitan and Sean.
Alderman, you have a smile on your face. That's good news. We're happy to see that. I know that just off air, you stated that you had a good weekend, so we're glad, we're energized for a new week. But into the conversation of local government reform, this motion was moved last week. And again, criticisms from the opposition, but at the same time, we are seeing on the part of the government, they're actually now doing something about local government. Regardless of whether or not we're in a local government election year, the mere fact is after decades, a bill has been put on the table. Are you satisfied, though, that after decades, this bill actually covers everything, or at least almost everything, that needed to be tended to?
Yes, definitely. The local government reform bill, it has been on the cards for a number of years, as you would have just stated. We who are in local government, we know the restrictions, we know the bureaucracy that prevents us from performing at our optimal level. So we look forward to this bill and what it entails.
Certainly. Now, Alderman, I'd like to just express my main concern out of this, and this is, I am satisfied that the government recognizes that each corporation will have their individual needs, and the structures of each organization may differ based off of those needs and how they go about doing their business. My only concern is, whilst it seems to give a lot more power and authority to corporations, the mere fact that they now have to go through, well, not now, but the fact that they still have to go through the Ministry of Finance for approval for these structures seems to still limit the business of the corporation. Do you think that this is good from the point of view that there is oversight from the Finance Ministry, which should lead to a bit more accountability, or do you think that this is just continuing bureaucratic red tape?
No, you would have said it quite correctly first time. There must be some oversight to ensure that, the money is being appropriated, the money is being spent the way that it needs to be spent. So there must be some sort of oversight.
But in relation to that oversight, do you think that it should be the Minister of Local Government rather than the Ministry of Finance?
With respect to money matters, it's money matters we are dealing with. You remember the whole purpose, not really purpose, but one of the main issues with the local government reform is the fact that property taxes would have to be collected. Mm-hmm. And the Ministry of Finance, remember, they would be that organization who would be in charge of collecting those taxes. So it will be the Minister of Finance. I don't see the need for the Minister of Local Government to be involved in that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that actually is one of the, I guess you could say, almost lightning rod issues on the legislation, because on one hand, we know that resources or lack of resources, particularly financial resources, could be one of the major problems for local government initiatives, projects, etc. And there are a lot of things that the regional corporations, the mayor's office, they are supposed to see about for their communities. Property tax is supposed to be a way to essentially bring in revenue to allow local government bodies to do what they have to do. However, it comes with the caveat that we are now coming out of a pandemic that is followed up by a war. All of these things have they've caused prices of goods and services. The cost of living has continued to increase. Now might not necessarily be the time to implement this tax. I do have to ask, what is the opinion of your fellow members, your fellow aldermen, your fellow councillors, and what have you heard from the people on the street with regards to property tax? Are people willing to bite a little bit more of a bullet if they could see that some of their roads, municipal policing, certain other problems be seen about more efficiently?
Well, to answer your question, I don't think anybody would be excited about paying any additional taxes. But you are quite correct. In many of the residents, when they speak about it, they're saying, well, if it is, I have to pay this tax, I expect that, my drains will be cleaned more regularly. I expect that, this pothole that you all will see about it. So to whom much is given, much is expected with respect to this. And there will never, ever, ever be a good time to place a tax. This is something that I hope we remember that this was supposed to happen some years ago. And due to a court matter, the Minister of Finance, they had to put a pause. So property taxes would have already been in play, even before the pandemic. So, that excuse to me is just basically an excuse. There will never be a good time for anybody to pay a tax.
Now, Alderman, you're fair in your comment stating that there'll never be a good time to implement a new tax or for anyone to pay tax. I absolutely agree with you. I think the argument, though, is now more than ever, due to the economic situation and the strains faced by the citizenry, that it would be very difficult to implement. It's not a new tax, but I guess implementing an old tax that has been put on pause. Now, that is one aspect of it, but in your opinion, as we're talking about property tax and local government, how it will benefit local government, I think we need to move away from the conversations of box drains and rats. They play a key role in local government and ensuring that our environment is kept clean, and by extension, it also helps all around, just besides keeping it clean. But in moving away from that, should we now create a separate fund, as been suggested by a few within the public domain, for property tax collection to ensure that, as stated, it is for local government, it is for the use and benefits of local government? Should property tax go into a separate fund to ensure that local government is given its dues and that the citizens know where their money is going and get value for their money?
I was sorry, you were breaking up a little bit. The internet was unstable. You said that the property tax should go into a separate fund? That's what you were saying?
Do you think an autonomous fund should be created for property tax to ensure that local government gets what is required, what is necessary?
Well, I think that is what is being tabled in the bill, if I'm not mistaken. And you're quite correct. It's not just about catching rodents or drainage. Under this new regime with respect to, under this local government bill, we'll also be looking at, it's not just road patching, paving, drainage, we'll be looking at also social support. And I believe that also under this bill, the local government authority will be responsible for schools. So there would be an additional amount of responsibilities that will be placed in the corporation. So it is hoped that the population would understand the importance of the property tax so that, we can have a better society. We hear persons complaining daily. Yes, we are in the throes of a pandemic, but we see persons complaining daily about, things that they believe that they are not getting. They believe the government is not performing because there are things that are not happening. So what is happening now is that central government is basically devolving some of the responsibilities to the local government authorities because, at their level, they may not see the importance of this particular road in an area, but the local government authority would see it as that. So when you say autonomous fund, I believe in terms of where the property tax is concerned is that when the monies are collected, because as you can well imagine, the taxes collected probably in the Sandy Grande area would be different from the taxes that will be collected from the Port of Spain area, because remember, the taxes are based on the valuation of properties. So, I believe that the monies then will be apportioned to suit. So I'm just looking on, I'm reading, and I'm just looking on to see the debates and to see what little changes, what would happen. So let's see.
Well, one of the things that you mentioned was the increased responsibilities, and it seems like a significant amount of things are now going to be under the purview of local government. And also, to help deal with that, yes, there's a proposed basic structure, from what we understand, also includes an executive in order to deal with some of these responsibilities, which includes economic development in the area that the local government body has responsibility for. Something that sort of term is usually not necessarily, I don't think, associated under our system of local government with regards to what that term invokes. So, I mean, I have to ask you and your fellow councillors, aldermen, are y'all looking now at the new responsibilities that are potentially going to be put upon you? The challenge that is involved, is that going to cause any significant shifts in how your area of Sangre Grande might have to be run? Is it going to cause demands now that's going to change the way how local government politics is going to be?
Most certainly, and let me correct you, many corporations right now, they have local economic development committees.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I was the chair of the very first local economic development committee at the Sangre Grande Regional Corporation. And it was not just local economic development, we were strategically planning. So we had a seminar where we met with all persons of society, business, the church, all persons, all the sectors, community organizations, CBOs, NGOs, where we sat down and we tried to think about a strategic plan, where we want to see Sangre Grande in the future. That plan has since expired, but strategic plans, you can still follow from an old plan and then, move forward. And in the plan, you look at what it is your region offers. Where your region, we call the Sangre Grande region the food basket. A number of the vegetables and provisions that we see in the market, they come from the Sangre Grande region. We are known for fish, especially on the Turpo side and whatnot. And what else can we do? So what the Local Economic Development Committee at Council that I chaired, what it is we basically did, we met with all these partners and we created databases. We had fairs, street fairs, where persons could have met with these individuals, who had their wares for sale. Because the main purpose now, especially in areas like Sangre Grande, the regional corporation is the largest employer, and we can't employ anyone. We can't employ everyone. So the purpose of it is for persons now to develop their own talents, see how it is they can be self-sufficient, use what talents, as I said, you have, or what is your special skill, and you can make your own money. And a lot of corporations, I'm sure everyone knows about in Tunapuna, they have their large near Eddie Hart, where they have their food stores. That was formed under the Local Economic Development Committee, where they created a space so food vendors could have come and they are being self-sufficient. So it is something that the regional corporations, they have already been taking active part in the local economic development of their specific regions.
Well, let me just apologize for underestimating the work of the local government officials thus far. Keaton?
I don't think we could ever underestimate the importance of local government, as even highlighted by this bill. But with just about 2 minutes left, Alderman, I must ask you, we have to look at both sides of the coin. Now, this is the first major change to local government. This is the first major local government reform bill since the Municipal Corporation Act of 1990 under the NAR government. But the United National Congress opposition, they've criticized this. They said they're against it. They cited insufficient consultation with stakeholders, and this was rebutted on the part of Camille Robinson Regis. And then they also cited it poses no equity within the bill based off of population size and geographic locations for the corporations. They are against property tax being implemented at this time. It says it actually now puts a strain on union workers as it reduces the protection, and the creation of the Executive Council excludes the voice of the minority. These are all criticisms of the bill on the part of the opposition. I mean, how do you respond to this? In my opinion, the first response on the part of the opposition was poor and weak, but that is my opinion. I mean, what is your thoughts on the response of the opposition to this bill?
We share the same opinion, Kita. We are not surprised that would be, I guess for every single thing is for consultation. It's a what do you call them, a one-song pony, a one-note pony. That's always the claim of the opposition. And mind you, I am a PNM, but one of the persons would share this opinion that Suraj Rambachan was a good local government minister. And a lot of these things that are in the bill are things that when he was a minister, he would have been in support of. So on one hand, you're in support of something, but that's because, the PNM is bringing forward the bill, all of a sudden you have an issue. There have been consultations far and wide and long, short, tall. I don't know how else to say it again, with respect to this local government bills. So that is a total farce, as we would have said. We share the same opinion. There's absolutely no excuse. And what I notice is that, they always complain, they always give problems, but what is the solution? What is the suggestion? What are you stating that we should do instead of?
Well, Olaman, I would share the same, the last point you raised, what are the solutions? But I mean, that's where we're going to have to leave it for now. That's all the time we have. Thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning and for sharing your thoughts and opinions on the bill. We look forward to the debate continuing, and we'll continue the conversation later on, perhaps next week. But Alderman, thank you very much for your time this morning.
No problem. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. All the best.
You too, Alderman. Have a good week.
WESN breaks for news on the hour.
Seven is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc, Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN. It's a cold, wet, damp Monday morning. Well, we haven't seen outside for quite some time, so we don't know if the sun is shining as yet. But nevertheless, we're very happy to be here. We're very happy to be alive and well on this beautiful Monday. And join us now on the program, 623-9376, 622-9338. Share your comments and thoughts on the Prime Minister's press conference on Saturday, of which he announced the easing or the lifting of all restrictions that were in place for COVID-19. Of course, minus mask wearing in a public setting, and an antigen test is needed to enter Trinidad and Tobago. The other part of the press conference, which was rather interesting, was his response to the Vice President of Guyana, Barry Jagdio's comments about Trinidad and Tobago falling apart. For the most part, the Prime Minister is trying to stay out of a diplomatic route. I think we need to recognize that.
Yeah, but then also there was something that the Alderman said in our conversation just before the break with regards to consultations, or at least you brought it up. That was one of their the opposition's argument. And I'd just like to remind the viewers, when it came to Tobago autonomy, the PDP basically said that there was years of consultations. When it came time to debate the bill, what did the UNC do? The opposition basically went straight to lack of consultation, despite the fact that the PDP was on record for the amount of years Tobago autonomy was debated and consulted with the people of Tobago. So I can't help but agree.
Enough.
Unfortunately, this might be crying wolf, but when I hear lack of consultations, it's hard to take it seriously.
Interesting enough, Camille Robinson-Regis was prepared. Before, she stated that the opposition was crying about consultations, but she made it clear that there was enough opportunity. There were 3 members of the opposition who sat on the bench, and the opposition never refuted the claims put forward by Camille Robinson-Regis, never responded to it. Anyway, good morning, caller from Pity Valley, who joins us now on the line. Good morning, welcome to the program.
Morning, Sean and Keaton.
Good morning.
Sean and Keaton, whether sometime disagree with you all sometime, I will never stop supporting a program and watching you all.
Thank you.
Despite what error every human being make, you all tend to be fair and balanced. Having said that, to the Prime Minister press conference yesterday, with the controversial about with Guyana, when he was asked the question, I think he really, really handled it well by just stating some people will talk good about Trinidad and some will not, and he just left it there than trying to more. I didn't want him to go into to more wrangle about it, and he left it there, which I think was a good job. He did. Somebody asked him a question after and he did went into Rodney Charles, and I think he could have just leave that there too.
Yeah.
Having said that, with the reopening, I think it's time, and I think all the measures is basically fair to just leave the little mask for a little while, and I have no problem. I think it's fair enough, and that's all I have to say this morning about that, and you all have a nice day.
You too, caller from Pretty Valley. That was good hearing from you. Thank you very much for your continued support.
I think it's important to acknowledge, I mean, it's not a big thing, right? It's not as though the Prime Minister solves all of our problems with that one act. But the point is, these are the things we're asking our politicians to do. Not to descend into bubbles for no good reason, just because you don't like what somebody else said. It was a good sign. Hopefully this could be an example that political debates could continue to follow, and we don't descend into the usual bacchanal of yesteryear.
I think the Prime Minister practicing restraint in his response. Yes, he may have gotten a bit carried away in relation to opposition member of Parliament for Naparima, Rodney Charles. But I think generally, for the most part, him practicing restraint. And as you pointed out, I do hope, and need I say wish, that will lead to better debates, continued debates, which we see healthy conversations and discussion, rather than, as you pointed out, bubble, as we like to call it here in Trinidad and Tobago. We do have a call on the line from Digger Martin with us. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if it's possible I can stray away from what you all are discussing.
Go ahead. Of course, yes.
I just want to mention something about the sport. I want to say congratulations to the West Indies team.
Yes.
For their excellent performance, all-round performance. And I just want to say to the young man, Joshua De Silva, who is from Digger Martin, and a Fatima boy, just like my grandson. And he reminds me a lot of my grandson. And you see what good upbringing does a child.
Yes.
That is why cricket is called a gentleman's game. He's a real example of that. And I admire him and I admire his parents. I don't know them, but you could see he was brought up in the best of way he could have been.
Yes.
And congratulations to them and the women as well for getting into the semi-finals. And I wish them all the best. Good morning to you and have a good day.
You too, caller from Digger Martin. Thank you very much. I intended to just highlight that just nearer towards the end of the program, and I thank you for raising it. Sean, the West Indies beat England by 10 wickets in the final test, 3 test matches that were played over the course of 2.5-3 weeks in the Caribbean. They beat them by 10 wickets to win the series 1-0. The first 2 matches were drawn. But the last game was excellent bowling on the part of the West Indies. And even though England, in the first innings, that 9-wicket partnership of 90 runs, they were able to build a decent foundation. The West Indies did not lose their heads, did not lose their cools. At one point, we were a bit scared, but at the end of the day, much congratulations to them. I'm truly happy. I followed the match, and I will tell you that this test team, there's still a bit of working to do in the middle order of the team, but this test team seems to be doing very well and is going to have a great future once we continue to build on what we've already learned.
Good news in sports for TNT within the last week. It just shows you how much more our athletes could do if they get proper support.
And the West Indies women in the World Cup semi-finals as well. We look forward to that game on Wednesday where they take on Australia. We do have a caller on the line with us from Shogunas. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
The question of consultation is not how much consultation you have. The important point is where people bring up suggestions. The reason why they were rejected should be documented. This is the problem in Tobago. There was a number of different people who wanted different things, and nearly everyone is dissatisfied with it, except the government, right?
Yes.
Because they didn't get what they wanted, and the reasons were not properly documented. The second point I want to make is the thing of Trinidad falling apart. Trinidad is falling apart. You know anything the government responsible for in Trinidad that is not falling apart? I don't know of any. And again, we go back to the reason for it is, I claim, is the annual administrative report.
Mm-hmm.
You claim yesterday that things could have changed. That couldn't be so, because Karen was there in 2008, and in 2015, Dr. Rowley complained that the UNC government was 4 years behind in administrative report.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever method there is for managing a bureaucracy,
Mm-hmm.
a bureaucracy is not a bad word. A bureaucracy is a complicated organization.
Yes, yes.
And government is just one of the most complicated.
Mhm.
And there are rules for managing a bureaucracy to make sure the left hand know what the right hand doing.
Yeah.
And one of the major ones is the annual administrative report. Any questions, gentlemen, or you wait till I hang up and I wait till the next
No,
day?
to your first point in relation to consultations, I think you're right. I think it needs to be documented why what they wanted was
Why they
rejected, why it
rejected.
wasn't included. But I think you're fair in making that comment. In relation to things falling apart in Trinidad and Tobago, again, I believe that it was a bit of a bitter reality that was highlighted on the part of the Vice President of Guyana, but it's diplomatic and we have to bear that in mind. But you're right, bureaucracy too, that is not a bad thing. I think we just make it, because of how it sounds and because of what we're accustomed to utilizing the word in what we say and what we do, it's become a negative connotation. But all
You know this
around,
happened
fair
before?
points.
You know this happened before, and the person was Mr. Manley from Jamaica.
Mhm.
And you know how he described it? As money passing through Trinidad as a dose of salt. You find that was more diplomatic?
Well, everybody has their opinions.
This is not an opinion, that is what the man said.
No. I'm talking about in relation
To him, his
to
opinion.
his comments and his
We
opinions.
do have another.
But thank you,
the same thing again.
Professor.
Well,
we do have another caller. We give you an opportunity, so thank you very much for your call.
Thank you. And I agree with you, Professor.
We have a call on the line from Tobago. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Sometimes I wonder why we refer to cricket as a gentleman's game. I love cricket. I just watch cricket all the time, no matter if West Indies losing or not. I just watch cricket. But if I had to play cricket with a helmet, a badge, and all them kind of, how is that a gentleman's game? It's easier for me to play football, or not? Football and basketball than for me to play cricket.
So it is a skill that goes with it.
Cricket could never be, in my opinion, a gentleman's game. You know, it's 22 yards and men coming up with the ball, and I doesn't vex with nobody who will make noise, you know.
Yeah.
Because, partners, I stay on the pavement when cricket is playing.
Thank you very much, caller from Tobago.
Thank you very much.
Cricket. I'm glad that you said that
I mean-
you support West Indies and watch them all the time, regardless of whether or not they're winning or losing. I mean, you have a very strong heart and strong emotions if you're able to do that. But I too support that no matter what, winning or losing, I cannot stop supporting them. I absolutely love my team. I just at times have to, be very careful how loud I'm shouting and talking when I'm displeased with their performance, because if the neighbors were to hear it, well, they might think differently.
I think, though, it's interesting that coming out of this pandemic now, where sports and the ability to practice, the availability of facilities, the ability to go out in public, etc., has been, well, at least it was severely hampered. But, at the World Championships, we've seen some incredible results from our sprinters. And now we're seeing where we have members on both West Indies teams and they're doing well. There was a bit of a stumble here and there with some of the cricket. But imagine now the tool to rally behind. And what is the value of that when we have an economic situation as we do now? To then have something to rally behind, to help us now, motivate us to pull together to get back on track. And I think we, as a small, young nation, because we are relatively young.
Yes, we are.
We really don't necessarily understand that value. It's something that, and I know a lot of people love to rag on America, but when I look at America, I think there's certain aspects of society that they have managed to get right, whether they purposefully chose it or they stumbled across it by accident. And I'm not saying that we have to be American, but you know, we had athletes and world-class, record-breaking. We still do. Maybe not record-breaking, but at least, you know, from multiple disciplines. And these are the guys, are examples that should be touted and put forward so that our kids could have something to aspire to do better instead of some who might have the wrong example in the neighborhoods, inspiring them to do the wrong thing. But also just to rally behind, because our politicians don't seem to really, at least right now, I mean, to be fair, you're asking politicians to do a 180 on their personalities and how they conduct leadership.
May I ask your opinion? Besides building stadiums or sporting complex, building it is one thing, maintaining it is another. And the maintenance of sporting complex throughout the country has been poor. Regardless of the reasons you want to use, it's been poor. Besides that, have you really seen enough support from government and government institutions in relation to sport? Have we done enough for sport?
And this is what Vice President Jagdeo is trying to avoid, I think, in a basic level. Let's not take our money and just spend it on things today for today, and then whatever happens tomorrow, we don't know, right? I think a lot of our expenditure in sport was basically just to pay the bills of today, as opposed to investing in some sort of infrastructure. So you build a stadium, but what else is the stadium being used for? Is there enough functions for this stadium in order for it to pay for itself? Can we invest in some sort of infrastructure to get business to the stadium or to get events at the stadium? Or in some cases, look at the facility and say, yes, we might like this facility, but ultimately, I don't know if we could afford to maintain it, because we can't expect the government to do like what they do for WASA, to do what they do for TNTEC and say, well, we'll just foot the bill. Because these days, the government doesn't seem to foot the bill. So no, you know, we could build new facilities, but it needs to have some degree of being able to sustain itself. It might not have to be 100%.
I don't think
that might be idealistic, but
I don't think we've monetized sports here in Trinidad and Tobago. And we've underutilized the opportunities. And I'm not talking about only in terms of the development of athletes and the opportunities, creating opportunities for athletes. I'm talking about all around stimulating the economy through the means of sports. You have a sports tourism, for example. Now, the Brian Lara Cricket Stadium in Tarouba, I like to use that just as an example, because and this is not necessarily due to government expenditure. There's controversy surrounding the expenses associated with it. I think on a whole, regardless of which administration implemented the plans to build it, I don't think it was necessary to build that stadium. I think the money that was utilized into building that stadium could have been used elsewhere. I look at an example, CPL. They gave CPL that stadium 3 years of use for the final. But at the end of the day, even though they gave it, somebody has to spend money on it. And who's spending money on it? The government, and by extension, taxpayers' dollars. There was no need to build it. When you have the Queen's Park Cricket Club, which is privately owned and run, by the way, by the members of the club, just as an example, it's well-renowned. It's well-renowned. It's probably the most famous cricket grounds in the Caribbean, just because of history behind it. We don't even utilize that much. I mean, how often do you hear international cricket taking place in the Queen's Park Cricket Oval? I saw tests, 3 tests, with the West Indies versus England over the last 3 weeks, right? You had it, and I'm glad the small islands got cricket, Antigua got cricket, Grenada got cricket, and I'm glad that they experienced that. But at the same time, Barbados got cricket as well. But at the same time, why is it that Trinidad and Tobago cannot host one of those games?
So like Queen's Park, you might say, well, maybe they don't have enough parking. Maybe they don't want to park them in the park next door. Put all the cars for all of the cars coming in. Well, one of the ways to support sport infrastructure-wise, is to have transportation so that people could come in on public transport and leave on public transport. And again, these things, a good public transportation system will alleviate our roadways. It would help with traffic, make us more productive. Those people who are traveling far don't necessarily have to drive themselves to Port of Spain if that's their destination. And then other industries will benefit for having that. Things like that, that we don't do, that we try to do everything in silos the hard way, each one. At some point, you're just going to kind of run out of money and effort in order to get everything done.
And I think that is it. Running out of money and the effort now going into where we can best spend our money. We have CPL this year. I'm not sure if the finals will be played in Trinidad and Tobago, if any games at all will be played in Trinidad and Tobago, because the planning for that would have already taken place. However, now that we have a lifting of our restrictions, that may be altered or changed to suit. But at the same time, I always go back, look at the cycling velodrome that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago. And we have an indoor aquatic center as well. Those are things that, in my opinion, I think they're underutilized. For example, cycling is a sport that has gained quite a bit of popularity in Trinidad and Tobago over the last couple of years with Jazane Phillips, and then most recently, this gentleman who they said were cheated at the Olympics last year. But I don't want to get into that controversy. The mere fact is it's gained a lot of popularity. Are we pushing that sport enough? We have the indoor cycling facility. Why is it that we can't push that enough?
Pandemic aside, normally speaking, just look at football and the state of intercall football and the state of our local league football. And I will bet money that everybody has a Premier League team or maybe a Spanish league team or an Italian league team or German, except for me, right? Everybody will have a foreign football team from Europe that they support before any local school or club team. And I'm not necessarily saying, like, I could understand the reason why. I'm not coming down on anybody for that. It's because local football isn't really anything going anywhere. And yes, our local clubs are not going to compete with regards to love football as the Premier League. That's fine. But however, part of it is an infrastructure that will have schools doing these sports. And then from these schools now, cricket, cycling, swimming, we have these stadiums. The schools feed into professional athletes. Right now, we basically just depend on individuals to make that determination on their own and figure out their own way, as opposed to doing, I believe, like what Jamaica does with regards to having systemic support infrastructure-wise, including regular competitions, regular fan support. If we took cricket seriously, why don't we have serious cricket tournaments that are well attended, well marketed, well put together, right, that are competitive from our secondary schools?
Sean, I was told...
Well attended, not just have cricket.
I was told years ago with TT Pro League, it was hard to get seating in a stadium. It was packed out. Everybody was out to support their team. And then because I think there was opportunity. I think it lost its touch because for whatever reason. And this is probably something that Andrew Batiste on the Face of Sports could discuss even more. But even with him, he was saying long ago it was packed out.
Just note, Americans don't just pack out their stadiums for professional sports or for college sports, but for their school sports. They support their kids. It's a major event, and they gear their infrastructure.
College basketball and college
not just
football.
Not just college. Because
I know, but it's a
I know it's a business.
Even a little big league now.
Look. They make sure to have the professional games on Sunday, the college games on Saturday, so the high school games are on Friday. They put those things in place. And those high school games are where they get their professional athletes. They have to start from somewhere. So if we want great cricketers and we want great cyclists and we want great swimmers, we have to put things in place to take it seriously.
From the secondary schools football league to what? Because even the TT Pro League is nothing now. It really is.
But we had it.
Exactly.
But we had it.
And why did we lose it? There's so many reasons as to why. As I said, maybe that's a conversation that Andrew Batiste on the Face of Sports can have sometime. But Sean, that is where we have to end the conversation. Thank you very much for your opinions shared, the thoughts and the knowledge expressed, especially in the last conversation in relation to American sports and how we here in Toronto could look at opportunities as well.
I'm
We have to
American sports guy.
we have to get Sean into football. Soccer, as you would put it. We have to get Sean.
I would probably quicker be more into cricket.
All right,
I'll be honest.
Well, whatever it is, we got to get Sean playing one of those sports, or at least watching and then analysing one of those sports. But anyway, folks, thank you very much to Alderman Danielle Piper for coming on the program this morning and sharing her thoughts and opinions on local government legislation. And then thank you very much to all our callers for their contribution, adding to the debate as the latest here in Trinidad. I'm Keaton Shaw, Mr. Sean Michael Small.
What happens in Ukraine affects us all. People keep praying for those in Ukraine.
Keep praying indeed. Well, we wish you a very good day. We wish you a safe day. And we wish you a great week ahead. For now, that's it on Talking Point. But it's not it for the Content Capital. You can look out for Madam Fix It at 11:30. But that's it. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.